Portuguese Golden Visa is the best in the world, but what is the government doing? I talked to Sam about what this visa is currently and how these changes could potentially affect you. Well, Sam, before we talk about the possible death of the Portuguese Golden Visa, or at least the changes, let's get an idea of what the Golden Visa actually is and how it came about in Portugal.
Right, okay. Well, the Golden Visa started way back in 2012. It's become ever more popular year on year because there's a number of very unique features about the Golden Visa. The main concept of a Golden Visa, not just in Portugal but in anywhere, is in return for an investment into a particular country, you are given the rights of residency in that country. Ultimately, after a certain period of time, you can turn that residency into citizenship, okay, which is essentially becoming a passport holder. Now, with Portugal, as it stands at the moment, that period of time is 5 years, which we'll come on to later, may be changing, but it's 5 years at the moment. You need to be resident in Portugal to change it to citizenship. The beauty with the Portugal Golden Visa is you don't need to become tax resident. So all you need to do is spend 1 week per year in Portugal, which is a holiday. In fact, it's 1 week in the first year. It's a very nice holiday. And now, in fact, they do it. It's 1 week in the first year. Then it's 2 weeks in each 2-year period following that.
Okay.
So you can essentially have a holiday for 1 week in the first year. Then the following year, you could do a 2-week holiday. Then you don't even need to go the next year. But the main point of this being is you don't have to become tax resident in Portugal. So you make the required investment into the country. You can even stay now in the country that you're in. You just need to do that holiday once a year, and at the end of 5 years you can then apply for citizenship.
Okay, so it's as if you're working towards the citizenship without having to move right away.
Correct.
And or become a tax resident. So if you don't want to pay taxes
Correct.
in Portugal, then the Golden Visa is a good option compared to something like the D7,
Absolutely.
where the D7 is a residency visa and you have to live in Portugal and you have to pay taxes.
Absolutely right. So the only way to do this and not become tax resident is through the Portuguese Golden Visa, which obviously if you do the D7, you become tax resident. There are also other requirements such as you have to prove your income every year. You have to have a certain amount in the bank initially as well. You know, there's various restrictions if you like. It's a complicated process. The Golden Visa, there's no age requirements, there's no income requirements, there is no requirements whatsoever, other than you don't have a criminal record and that you invest the appropriate amount into the country, which probably going to lead you on to the next question.
Yeah, before that question. We're going to
yeah.
talk about that. But before that question, if someone wanted to do a Golden Visa and they actually wanted to live in Portugal, let's say 2 years into it, can they move to Portugal?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, that's a really good point because the beauty of the Portuguese Golden Visa is it will allow you to stay in Portugal as long as you want. You can obviously move freely within the Schengen area, but there are restrictions in other countries. But Portugal itself, you can stay here, you can work here, you know, you have the right to live, to work, to retire here. So yeah, you do. But the beauty, again, it's different if you're wanting to live in Portugal. But when you look at it ultimately becoming a citizenship, in 5 years' time, if you get your passport, but that then opens up a world of opportunity in moving to other places within the EU and not having to stay there for a certain period of time. You know, you can stay there for as long as you want. So from that perspective, not just for Portugal, the Portuguese Golden Visa is a great way to get the EU passport that can allow you to move freely throughout Europe, which is a really, really important factor.
Definitely. And maybe one tactic as well is you could come to Portugal, let's say, and stay here for 5 months out of the year. Yep. So you could stay a little longer than what the normal 90-day visa that a lot of Americans and Brits and such have. But then you're under that tax, so you're not having to pay taxes. So a little bit more freedom.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, people need to understand the difference between residency and tax residency. You can be a resident of a country, but you become tax resident in most situations when you live there over half the year.
Right.
So you're exactly right. That's what people might want to do. They might not. I mean, there are benefits actually to tax regime in Portugal. There's NHR 2.0. The 1.0 was withdrawn. So the second one's not as good as the first one, but there are benefits to that to certain people. So some people, it might be beneficial to become tax resident in Portugal, but for some people, planning for the future, you know, you're almost thinking, well, in the future, I want to retire to Portugal, or it might be somewhere else in the EU, but this is not for 5 years or 7 years or whatever it may be. But you can start the process now by essentially investing some money, parking that money there, and then in 5 years' time, get your passport. And of course, once you've got your passport, you don't need to have that investment anymore. You can sell that, get rid of it. You don't need anything. There's no requirements then. You will have a Portugal passport, which I think is the 3rd strongest passport in the world. It's an incredibly strong passport. So loads of benefits from that point of view.
Okay, so let's talk about what the different options are for the Golden Visa, because it's not as if, I mean, there are some donations, but it's not as if you send all this money off and you never get it back.
No. There's 5 different options. So the first option is you invest 500,000 into research activities. It's a donation to the government. So 500,000, you pay it.
So that one is gone.
It's gone.
Okay. But I'm guessing that one's not that popular.
Not popular at all.
Because there are better options.
I don't think we've ever done any of them, but it's not so popular. There is a 250,000 donation, which is an option. That's into the arts and culture. So you pay 250,000, but similar to the 500,000, you don't get it back. You're essentially paying 250,000 to have your residency and gain.
And that's very specific arts, right? It's not like you can't just pick and choose.
No, you can't. No, and it's a really good point with any of these we're talking about. Yeah, make sure you're doing it in the right thing, because even if you think it ticks the boxes and you find out it doesn't, you need to get advice on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one way of doing it. The other one is that you start a company that employs 10 people over a longer period of time. Again, not so popular unless you've already got a company up and running. It's difficult to get 10 people on board and then to maintain them positions and know that you can do that for the period of time. So unless you've already got a company in place that you're moving over to Portugal, I think again that's less popular. Where it gets a bit more interesting is the last two. The first one is you invest money and the minimum amount is 500,000. But it's not, because I'll come on to that. But it's minimum amount officially is 500,000 you put in. You invest 500,000 into a qualifying investment fund. Now there's a number of rules for these investment funds. They've got to be regulated in Portugal. They've got to invest in over 60% into Portuguese stocks. There's a number of other criteria. There's about 35 funds that are available now. I think it's increasing. But you have to be really careful with funds because you get some that have huge initial charges, ongoing charges, exit penalties. So what we've sourced, particularly our company, to look at ways that you can get investments where you're paid interest up front. And this is where it becomes a little bit more interesting. Because if your minimum amount in that investment fund is 500,000, there are options where you can have the interest paid up front, and the interest on the ones we've got at the moment around 101,000 for the 5 years. So it represents about 4% per year. So you only need 399,000 because you're paid that 101,000 up front. You've got the 500,000.
Okay,
there's a number of funds, different funds that we can do this with. There's no ongoing cost. That interest is fixed. There's not a danger in you not getting it. You have that at the outset. So in year 5, when you get your citizenship, you've made your money, you've made your 4% because you paid it up front. At that point, you don't need that investment anymore. You can sell it, you've got your money back. So basically, you're parking your money for 5 years.
Right.
You've got that interest up front, so it's no different to putting your money in a savings account, but you're just parking it into these qualifying investment funds. To make it a little bit more interesting, even if people are looking for a lower entry point with investments, there are some where you can actually attach a loan to it, which we have the facilities in place to do that. So you can actually bring that initial investment down to about 325,000.
Okay.
But part of that would be a loan. It's repaid at the end of the 5 years. People are interested in that sort of thing. We can go in more detail. But we did that as a way really of making people have a lower entry point with it. So that's one option. It gets very confusing here, and I will say this, but there is ways of doing it through the investment route where it's actually cheaper than the donation route. So the cheapest donation, as we mentioned, was 250,000.
Okay, yeah.
But you can do an investment route which costs as little as 170,000. However, that money is lost. What you're essentially doing is paying 170,000, and an investment company will invest on your behalf in your name. But for that privilege, you've paid 170,000. You'll never see it again. So it's not an investment. But if people are looking at donation route and thinking, what's the cheapest way I can do it?
Yeah.
You can do it for 170.
Okay.
So that's a good way of doing it. The other final number 5 route is to invest in an existing company that maintains 10 jobs over a 3-year period.
Okay.
And there are options with that as well, very, very similar to the fund options. Sometimes the fund options are better for people. Sometimes it's better for them to do the company option that's already up and running. We would advise people and talk people through their situation as to which is best. But similar to the fund route, there are ways of doing that where you'll get compensational income, if you like, up front from your investment. Okay. To bring that entry point down to 325,000 for an investment. As I say, we can do it for less amount, but don't want to overcomplicate it. But they're the 5 different routes. And if you use one of them 5 routes and you maintain that investment or that donation, but it's for that 5-year period.
Right.
Then at the end of that, then you have to do a language test. And as long as you've got no criminal record, you can then apply for citizenship. So in year 6, you would have your Portuguese passport. And as I said before, I'll repeat again, you won't need to spend any time in Portugal, just that 1 week per year as a holiday. And that's what makes it unique. It's the only European program where you're actually able to invest that amount of money and not become tax resident. There's not another program out there. It's more a matter of how long is it's going to be available for in its current form.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about that, because now we have an idea of how it is, but there are possible changes on the horizon.
Yeah.
So as it stands now, after 5 years, you can apply for citizenship. You get your money back that you've invested, and you don't through these 5 years, you're not having to be a tax resident if you don't want to.
Correct.
So what are some possible changes? And right now, where we stand at the beginning of October, when could the changes happen?
Yeah, so initially we thought it was announced at the middle of September, the government were going to, it's the AD coalition, obviously got back in. Part of what they said was that they were going to tighten naturalisation requirements. This might mean you might need to, that 5-year period will go up, which I'll come on to. That's the idea of what they wanted to do. They wanted to tighten the naturalisation requirement. At the moment, they've delayed that. So from the middle of September now, it's going to be more like the middle of November. Knowing the way these things work, I think the likelihood is it's going to be the beginning of next year, because it's going to have to go through various different back and forths as it always does. So it's probably going to be January, February. I'd imagine we'll know more about what these are going to be, but they are going to be tightening naturalisation requirements. Now, what we think this will mean is that instead of being the 5 years I'm mentioning now, it's going to be 7 years. There's even talk of it becoming 10 years.
Okay.
I was reading this morning in the UK newspaper actually that the Netherlands now have increased theirs from 5 years to 10 years, not for a golden visa, but just generally for people migrating to that country. They want people to have closer ties to the country that they're moving to, which is absolutely fair. You completely understand that. So what that would mean, for example, if it's how we think it will be, is if, for example, you're on the D7 visa, or the Golden Visa, is instead of being 5 years, it might be 7 years or possibly 10 years.
Right.
Now, if you're on a D7 visa, for example, which people might be familiar, which is more your working visa, where you need a minimum income coming in, there's various sort of restrictions, that you have to be tax resident for that visa for 7 years. So it's quite a long, or even 10 years it might be. So it's quite a long period of time.
Right.
For the Golden Visa, when this changes, if they're going to make it 7 years and it's going to apply to the Golden Visa, it still shouldn't mean that you would have to become tax resident because you hold that residency Golden Visa card.
Right.
So because you have that card, all it would mean is you can't apply for the passport in year 5. It would have to be year 7.
Okay.
But then on the other hand, you don't necessarily have to become tax resident. So
Right.
you know at the outset.
Right.
So that's what we think the changes are likely to be. It's going to not affect the Golden Visa as much as it will other ones such as the D7 or other types of visas. But there should be some crossover. And it's probably worth pointing out at this point that the Golden Visa works under a different legal structure to the other types of visas and the other types of offerings. So what the government could do, the Portuguese government could say, we're not going to change the Golden Visa.
Right.
And I think what they're trying to do is strike a right balance between thinking, okay, we want to have investment coming in, but we also want to be fair in terms of having that sort of naturalisation into a country. So I think that they will make some changes to the Portuguese Golden Visa, but it won't have as much of an effect because Portugal wants to be the #1 hub for people investing money in Europe. So it's hard to do that by making it very difficult to get the Golden Visa. It's also worth pointing out at this point, nothing has changed now. So if you want everything in the form it is at the moment, we can get things through now. Obviously, when the changes come in, if you're already in, you're already in. They're not going to go
grandfather in, right?
They grandfather in.
I think that's actually in their constitution, right?
It is absolutely correct. So we can get things through on the current terms. Then, because the one thing we do know is any changes aren't going to make it better. But I mean that in a nice way. It's not going to be better in terms of what it's going to...
What it offers now.
What it offers now. It's not going to be the 5 years down to 3 years. If anything, it's going to go to 7 years or potentially 10 years. But as I say, the effect on the Golden Visa shouldn't be as much as it will on other types of visas, but it's certainly something to bear in mind.
Right. So if you're interested, now is the time to actually do it, get in, and then you should be able to, if you get everything passed, if they do pass it to 7 or 10, you should just be 5 still if you already. So anyone who's applied now will be 5 years.
Absolutely correct. And we do find a lot of people who aren't so familiar with the Golden Visa, the whole concept of the Golden Visa. People, because they might be moving to a country, might think, oh, I need the D7 or I need a nomad visa, and they go straight for it. But sometimes when you actually sit back and think about what is the better visa, now for some people that will be the D7, but for a lot of people, and we found a lot of people have converted once they've heard about the Golden Visa from the D7 to the Golden Visa because it's far less requirements there. There's no income requirements, there's no age requirements. Once you're in, you've got that asset. It's very, very straightforward. So we're finding a number of people have converted from the D7 to the Golden Visa, but it's really individual. It's a matter for you to work out what's best for you. And also we'll say as well, with the Golden Visa, when we talked about the investment amounts earlier, you can tag your whole family onto this.
With that one investment, like so that number you gave, it could be
of
5?
We've done ones, I think, with 8 or 9 people on one application, because you can have children dependents, but they could be, even if they're over 21, they're at university, we can prove that they're dependent, get them on, children, parents. we know what to look for with this, but as long as we can prove dependency, which again we know what to do, then you can tag them onto one application. Now, of course, if you're looking at the D7 visa, if you had 8 or 9 people on there, then you've got that minimum amount of 870 euros, whatever, per month.
You have to show a lot more money.
You have to show, because 50%, yeah. So that if you had 8 or 9 people on, you'd have to have a lot of money coming in per year to qualify. So that's just one example. But certainly the Golden Visa offers, if you've got the money there, and the way I would say you look at it, as it stands at the moment, if you've got the money there, you can put that money away for a 5-year period with a fixed return. So no different to being in your bank, because the guarantees are all written in there. So guaranteed money, fixed money paid up front. You stick that money there for 5 or 6 years without the need to move over there. It's a very simple way of doing it. And I will also say as well, a lot of people get nervous, I think, about the processing times for both the D7 and the Golden Visa.
Yes.
They are being worked on. The Golden Visa, they've changed the regulatory body that overlook it. They've made everything digital now. So the aim is to clear the backlog.
Okay.
But the 5 years will start from the application, not from once you get your residency card.
Which is amazing, because if it does take them forever or a long time to do it, then at least like your clock is already started ticking.
And this again is when we talked about the Golden Visa, this shows the commitment that the government have to the Golden Visa. They didn't need to do that before your countdown started with getting a residency card. Now the residency card could take 18 months. So once you've got that Golden Visa card, your 5 years were starting after 18 months. So it was actually 6.5, 7 years.
Right.
But the government changed that because they didn't want people to stop investing money in. So they changed it. So basically, as soon as we got the investment set up, which can take a couple of months, make the application on your behalf, because we did a whole process from start to finish, then we would send that application off, and that's when your clock starts ticking. So it will be 5 years or 7 years if it changes. But that will start from when we apply.
Well, we know that Spain just abruptly got rid of their Golden Visas. So are there any predictions that could happen in Portugal?
Well, the good news is no. It's incredibly unlikely. We don't think it will happen. In fact, we've heard reports that that will not happen. The Portuguese government have said that won't happen. And Spain did end it abruptly. It's not that. The balance now is going to just be on whether to make sure people have closer bonds to the country that they are getting the citizenship with. And it's not, as I say, aimed at specifically at Golden Visas at everybody. But in answer to is it going to go, it's not the end of the visa, but it will be a change to the visa. And as I said before, the change won't be more beneficial than what things are now. But from, like I said before, from everything we've seen, the commitment to the Golden Visa, trying to be the #1 hub for people investing money, you know, taking on a load of extra staff as well to managing the processing of the visas, to change the visa to 5 years from, you know, when you apply as opposed to when you get the Golden Visa. It all shows a commitment to that. So from all the sources, it won't go. Take this as gospel, it won't go. But I think it will change. And as I say, this is going to be 7 or 10 years. We will know more, I'd say early next year, end of this year. It won't be gone. It's the good news.
So there's security that it will exist, but there is still a little bit of nervousness or time sensitivity to get into the 5 years, because that is probably going to change, or at least going to change for the worse, like you said. So there's a little bit of a time sensitivity.
I would say so. It's one of these things, if anybody's interested and they think, well, actually, I didn't really know about it, I'd like to find out more, we can speak to people. It's all free consultation, but we can tell people about their situation and actually be very honest about what is the best option, because some people it will be the D7. But the fact that the Golden Visa is there in its current form with so many benefits to it that other Golden Visa programs don't have, that it's not going to be like that forever. As I said, we knew a couple of years ago, people might be familiar, you used to be able to invest in property to get the Golden Visa in Portugal. That was removed. We think they're going to be extending the amount of time to 5 years to 7 years or 10 years. So obviously it's getting less attractive as it's getting older, if you like, but there's still a lot of benefits for the government in terms of how many applications. 74% applications last year for the Golden Visa in Portugal, which is there was about 5,000 applications. There was a lot of applications. I think people are really getting on to once they start understanding it, thinking, actually, this is a really, really good program. So the advice would be, if anybody is thinking, is this for me, speak to us. Just have that consultation and find out whether it's right for you.
If you would like to be introduced to Sam, then you can check the description for his calendar, or you can email me at info@expatseverywhere.com and I will introduce you. Now, let's get moving.